What are your favorite types of deals, or which are the ones that feel like they pencil more often than others?
One of the things I didn't mention earlier, actually, I was ironically just writing it down, was the transactional funding deals where they're a short-term deal, 1 to 2 days. Sometimes they've gone 2 weeks. They've even gone as 30 days. Those are the ones we love, where it's a double close, but for whatever reason, you can't do a double close. You need the funds, and the investor doesn't have the funds. So they reach out to us and they say, hey, I need this money for a day. Can you do it? And we're like, sure. They obviously pay less than the other JV funding deals that we do, but those are great ones because they're guaranteed money. Pretty much make it where we're guaranteed we're not going to be held with our money, and our money's going to be sitting there. We check with the title companies to see like that the funds are going to be there on the B2C side before they sell it on the A to B side, and then we're safeguarded that way.
Could you maybe run through like a spectrum of deals from maybe the cheapest money that people end up getting towards the most expensive money people end up getting? And it could be outside what you do as well, just to paint a picture of types of ways that people get money and how much it costs them.
Sure. It's going to be a case by case basis, because if you've never done a deal, then it might be a little more expensive than if you've been a land investor for 10 years, just because we don't have a track record with you and we need a little proof that you know how to handle it. But a deal I did recently, I think we bought it for 13 and we ended up selling it for 40. And this was somebody I knew. So I think we had a straight kind of 50-50 deal where 50% profit to us and 50% profit to him. What we started recently was a waterfall effect where it's going to start off at 35% and then it's going to go up after 30 or 60 days, then it'll go to 40%, and then it'll go to 45%, et cetera, et cetera. Some people I've dealt with before, they're just used to the 50-50, or even sometimes if it's big enough profit, they might say, hey, can we do 30-70? And I know they know what they're doing. I know they get it sold. And so we have a big, long track record. And so I'm able to do that with them. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that does. Do you put timelines on there? Is there a sliding scale for how long it takes for dispo?
Sure. So we have a clause in there that if it goes over 1 year, that we're actually we would take 100% of the profit, but that really never happens. That's just, they're the safeguard for that one deal that might come where if the investor fell off the face of the earth and just stopped doing land investing, we had to take over and we had to do everything and we had to try to sell it. And even at that point, we would probably still give them something. I've never had to utilize that. That's where that is. But I've had a couple deals go with some people that are pretty well known in the land business and that are going on for a couple of years. It's sometimes, so we're used to it. It's part of the business. And sometimes you're just going to get a bad egg and there's really not much you can do, especially this was before we started doing the waterfall and all that, where it was just a straight 50-50 deal. So that the time has went on and I'm going to get the same amount of money that I would have got it if it would have sold a week later. But you learn from things like that. And so then that's why we do the waterfall effect.
Nice. And I'm curious about the 40% terrain. Is that 40% unusable terrain? And then why'd you pick that number? Is that just like
what's actually like 25 or 30%, but like 40, it's like a definite no. But you never say never. Like I just funded a deal in Idaho. It's like we paid $225,000 for it, and at the very end, like the terrain is like way more than 40. It's on the water and it like breaks off like a cliff. So, and that was actually somebody just looked at it and they're like, yeah, I like it, but the drop off at the end just doesn't work for me. Anytime you get over 25 or 30%, though, you're at the point where people are not going to spend the money to build. And that's where we're at as far as the terrain.
If let's say there's a 2-acre property and half of it has 40% terrain, it's basically unusable. How do you comp that? Do you just look at it like, okay, this is 1 acre of property basically and comp it that way?
Correct, exactly. And then we definitely would do our due diligence to make sure that the property is buildable and that we're going to be able to do whatever we wanted to do with that. But we will comp it as 1 acre of land instead of 2. and definitely talk to some realtors in the area and just make sure we're not missing anything.
Any other interesting, I'm sure there's all kinds of criteria, but any other kind of interesting criteria like the terrain that sticks out that you look for?
No, but like one that came across was like HOAs. If it has an HOA, it just depends. If the HOA is, $25 a year, then that's not going to be a problem. If we think the deal is going to sell in 40 days, then that shouldn't be a problem. Anything else as far as criteria, I think it just depends. There's some states like New York, if you've got any type of wetlands, then you're going to probably be dealing with an issue where like in Florida, you have wetlands, you might just be fine.